Hello, welcome to Season 11 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. This season, in each episode, we will not both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about it later. We have 10 previous seasons of doing exactly that, and it's time for something new. This season, each episode will focus on a larger horror topic, trend, or maybe even rumor. We'll speculate about upcoming movies, debate genre definitions, and do our best to apply the perspective of two people who have watched way too many horror movies to different types of horror media. Thanks for coming along for the ride. So, a few weeks ago, we did an episode outlining some of our most anticipated movies of 2022. Mm-hmm. And since then, I have seen two of them.
Well, look at you.
I know. That's what happens when you live a couple blocks from an Alamo Draft House.
That's a good point.
And it's 1,000 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
You go to movies because it's free air conditioning and cheap popcorn.
Yeah, so considering that I don't have an Alamo Draft House in walking distance yet, I am going to interview you about these movies.
We'll see how it goes.
And as everyone knows, I'm the best interviewer in the world.
That's true. Our interviews go really well.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years from now?
Yeah.
In an Alamo Draft House, watching a horror movie.
All right.
Hopefully with you.
Pass the first test. So the first one we're going to interview about is going to be about the movie Men. Came out in 2022. And when we were doing our podcast on trailers, like we were watching trailers on horror movies that are coming out, just kind of seeing what we think, how things are going to go. This was one I was like a little hesitant on, I feel like. It seemed interesting to me, but I didn't know what the hell it was going to actually be about.
Well, here's the thing. If you saw it, you'd kind of still feel the same way.
I wondered. I wondered.
Yeah. So this is an A24 movie, which means it was really creepy and weird and just kind of different all the way around. And so the high level, I guess, storyline is that a woman has a traumatic experience where her husband kills himself, and then she takes a vacation to the countryside by herself to kind of recover. And as the movie goes on, you get a little bit of background of like their relationship and kind of what actually went down and a little bit of story development around that, but not a whole lot. And then most of the things that happen to her while she's on vacation are creepy in different ways. And then the ending is just insane and does not offer any explanation for itself whatsoever. And so if you watch the trailer and you were like, I have no idea what's going on or what to expect from this, then that's probably a pretty accurate setup for the experience of watching the movie.
Gotcha. Okay. And so if that's coming from you, then I would for sure have no idea what the hell is even going on. Like, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, word on the street, though, is there is a pretty long sequence.
There is.
Of no dialogue.
Yeah.
Short of the F word being mumbled.
Yes.
Was that... Let's talk about that scene. 17 minutes of the film, which according to IMDb is 20% of the total running time, had no dialogue except for mutterings of the F word. How boring was that scene?
So...
Wait, was there music?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there was, but I think we talked about in the preview episode that this one had been described as folk horror, and I didn't really get that from watching the trailer. So before this episode, I did some reading about folk horror, and according to Wikipedia, which is obviously an unquestionable source on everything, folk horror is a subgenre of horror film for cinema or television that uses elements of folklore to invoke fear in its audience. Which really doesn't tell you anything that calling it folklore doesn't. But it goes on Typical elements include a rural setting and themes of isolation, religion, the power of nature, and the potential darkness of rural landscapes. Although related to supernatural horror films, many derive their horror from the actions and beliefs of people rather than explicitly supernatural elements. The primary focus of the stories is often upon native outsiders coming up against these forces. And based on that, I would say that whoever wrote this movie read that and was like, I can do it.
They may have been the one that updated Wikipedia.
Actually, that's a solid point. Yeah, this is just retconning in the definition. Yeah. But yeah, what I assume is the long sequence that you're talking about is towards the beginning. It's after she's arrived and she is just out like exploring the land. And it's a lot of just kind of open space. It's her like really feeling like she's out in nature and reconnecting and getting away from everything. And then I guess we'll get into some spoilers. So fast forward if you don't want them. She ends up in this like long tunnel that's made out of like stone, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I think it's connecting like two different pieces of property. And she is like making noise and listening to the echoes. And then she's making like songs out of the echoes and stuff. And it's like this whole, she's just free and out by herself and with none of the pressures or stress or anything, and is really just enjoying the moment and everything. And then at the very end, and this was probably definitely one of my favorites in the movie, is where she's doing that. And then all of a sudden you see a silhouette stand up and move at the far end of the tunnel. And it's and the fact that happened after this just kind of really long, boring, she's out walking around scene, made that a lot more impactful. And then it really kind of changed the tone of the movie, because up until that point, so much of it was just like sadness and regret and stuff, whereas that was like actually creepy. And then it introduced a lot of the creepier elements after that I think like that long time beforehand kind of made you let your guard down, which made it more effective when it happened. Did not make the 17 minutes go by faster, but it at least, like in the overall flow of the movie played a role.
Yeah, and so this was also the one where it appeared that one of the actors, I think his name is like Rory Kinnear or something, played like multiple versions of men in this film.
Yeah, so after she arrives at the vacation house, she has like video chats with a female friend, but she's there by herself, and she runs into several different men as she is, in the house, goes into town, is on walks like around the property and stuff. And those men are all played by the same actor, who is Rory. And it was weird because in some of it, it's just like, oh yeah, they're just using like makeup and costuming to make him look different. But there was also like, he played a child. So like there was a, maybe 12-year-old boy that he played. And so they did like the CG effects on the face and stuff that were really just kind of, like creepy, but like a little disturbing in that it was just like not quite human looking.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that,
and that was something that I kind of thought was strange in just watching the trailer was like in the trailer alone, you could see, and I'm just basing off the trailer where it looked almost like a little poorly done CGI, like where like you could definitely tell what they were trying to do.
Yeah, so I think that it was very deliberate that that you knew it was the same person. But so the next morning, Sarah and I went out to breakfast, and she was like, "Look up what that meant. Like, look up why that happened," because she was I think frustrated by it just because it was not a very straightforward story and had a very impactful ending. And so I did, and I noticed basically it seems like in every interview the director just says a bunch of stuff to make things even less straightforward. But there was one where he mentioned, when asked about, the same person playing all the men in the movie, was, well, you as the audience notice that, but in the film, she doesn't. So what does that say about the story that's being told?
God.
And so in my mind, what that means is, one, he's that type of person, but two, the fact that she doesn't see them all as the same, but you as the person watching the movie do, means that it's significant to the theme or the overall meaning of the story, not to the plot of the story.
Gotcha.
And so that, I thought, was just kind of an interesting insight that I hadn't had until I read that.
How many naked men did you see in this film?
So many.
Well,
oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, not my ideal Friday night.
So, Sarah dragged you to this film then.
No,
she's like, I got a film where I got a horror film. I want you to watch it.
Like, how many times we have to watch Aquaman? Oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah,
here's the thing though, like when I was reading about it, it was talking about, symbolism of dandelions. How it's significant.
That was definitely in there, but I don't think it did a good job of really revealing why it mattered.
Well, and that's where I was kind of getting to, because it's, to me, who the hell knows that? I mean,
right.
I'm not trying to be mean or anything. It's just like, how do you know that dandelions like reproduce asexually through a process called? No one knows that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, and also humans don't do that. So what's the point? Like, come on.
So it's like, so I think, although your theory on the writer reading the Wikipedia and thinking I can do that, I think that's good. But I think with this one, it could have been like they read an article once that said that dandelions reproduce asexually, and like, I'm going to make a film about that.
Then he was like single during COVID and had a lot of time to get his feels about it.
Yeah, he's like, I just wish I want a kid. Just want a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, overall, it was just like, most of it was kind of understated and creepy, and there were some really creepy scenes that I thought were just pulled off really well. There were some really good visuals. It was a very like beautiful movie, but the main thing that stands out in my memory when thinking back on it is just the ending sequence, which I won't go into a lot of because I really don't want to ruin it. Like, I think that it's worth watching just because it is very, very visually disturbing, and it really reminded me of like the end of the Suspiria remake. You know how like the whole thing is just kind of like low key creepy and almost like quiet and just like kind of a slow roll. And then there's that ending scene where everybody's like naked and getting murdered. And you're just like, wait, what? This just got ramped up hard. This got way more intense. I have no idea what's actually happening. And now I'm just supposed to go like back into my car and drive home. Like, what happened to me just now?
Yeah.
And this one had a very similar type of ending. And I was really not expecting it at any point leading up to it.
So, recommendations. Would you recommend this film?
I think I would. I think it was cool to see it in the theater just because, like I said, a lot of it was really like beautifully shot, and it was like a well-made movie, and like that intensity of the ending I think came through a lot more on like the big screen than it would just watching it at home. But also at home you could skip through 15 of the 17 minutes of the setup in the beginning and probably enjoy it more. So.
Yeah. Nice. Well, do you have anything else about this film that you would like to talk about before I get to interview on your next one?
I do not.
First question. What was the name of the movie that you watched that also?
Well, the second movie that I watched that I'd like to talk about today is Crimes of the Future.
That was the one with Viggo Mortensen.
It is. Mm-hmm. But I also feel the need to clarify that I watched Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg, not Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg. And by that, I mean that he made this movie in 2022, but he also made a movie with the same name in 1970, and they're in no way related story-wise.
That's amazing.
Like, I guess he just really liked the name, but
yeah.
The dude straight up made two movies with the same name 50 years apart.
Oh, good Lord.
So did he just forget?
Well,
He's just like, I don't know, I like the sound of this. That would make a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like one of the songs that you and I wrote like in 2009, and we played it with our second band, the band after that too. Right. Just like, hey, this is good. We're gonna keep the idea. Yeah. Or it's like a hindsight. Like in hindsight, I could have made a better version of this.
Well, yeah, because at first when I Googled it, I saw that there were two movies, and I was like, oh, is this a remake? Because after seeing this one, I was like, man, I bet that 70s version would be gnarly. But then I saw that it wasn't a remake, but it was his movie still. Just like, I have no explanation.
So confused.
For this, yeah. So anyway, what I watched was the 2022 Crimes of the Future by David Cronenberg.
Yep. And this one's about climate change? Is that what it was?
Not really. It's definitely sci-fi, and it's body horror.
Oh, okay.
And David Cronenberg's the same guy that did The Fly, so that's kind of his calling card. And
that's right.
The premise of it is that in the future, people's bodies are starting to mutate. And so they are one of the like more popular things, I guess, or the more like highly regarded things in society are performance artists and people who can create experiences that like blow people's minds or that are unique. And so some of them have these like body mutations and like use that as part of their performance art. And that is sort of the world that this movie exists in.
Gotcha.
But really beyond that, it was just kind of wild and all over the place. And like, there was definitely like an overarching story that you could kind of make out, but it was really vague. And when we left the theater, Sarah was pissed, like the whole drive home. She was just like, did that even make sense to you? What was the point of that movie? I have no idea what I just watched. Like, did you think that was good? Because I got nothing out of that. It was coming.
Say, hey, listen, this is just for the intellect, the smart people. That's why you don't get it.
Right, yeah. No, that was not the right answer.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's not right. Yeah, my bad.
But yeah, I guess overall it reminded me a lot of like Blade Runner 2049 or the new Dune, where it's like kind of big Hollywood-ish sci-fi that's like really high quality, but it's also kind of like minimalist and quiet. You know, where almost like an independent movie where everybody's emotions are like really muted and stuff. Like it's a very, very weird movie. And I don't like, in reading some stuff about it afterwards, it's like, okay, I could kind of see that. And I picked up on some of that, but the experience of watching it was just weird.
How did Viggo do in it though? That's what I need to know.
I think he was good.
Yeah.
But
per usual.
Yeah, but his role was also very like kind of quiet and reserved for a lot of it. So yeah, it wasn't him being like full Viggo. You know what I mean?
Well, you can only win some.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, this was one I think. Remember watching the trailer on and just kind of being a little confused about it.
Yeah.
Like just trying to figure out like what the hell is going on here. And I think I may have said like, well, it has Viggo, so definitely watch it, kind of thing. But being Cronenberg and body horror, I mean, I'll definitely watch it regardless. But still,
and I do have to admit, it was not as intense as I thought it would be. So this was one where we talked about kind of the claim to fame, or the thing that had us excited was that people were walking out of the film festival where it debuted.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, this is going to go hard. And there were definitely some very, very disturbing scenes, but there was also a lot of stuff that kind of happened like off camera, or you didn't really see it up close, whereas it could have been made much more intense if you had. So I don't know if the intent of that was to make this like a little bit more accessible, but I was expecting a lot more of the movie to have a lot more gore, Whereas really there were just a few like super memorable scenes that would have fallen into that.
So basically, I feel like we're just being scammed when we're told people are doing this.
That people are like leaving
walking out of theaters.
Well,
I mean, I feel like this has been happening from day one.
Yeah. I just, in the more snooty film festivals, I feel like they have a lot less exposure to harder horror. It's kind of like people who go to a lot of metal shows would be like, oh, that band's not that heavy. But then to like, the average person, they'd be like, what am I listening to?
That's good. It's a good reference. I can see that.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a really interesting movie. It was 2 hours long, which it did feel a little long at times, but for the most part it moved pretty well. It was very sci-fi, which I was also not expecting. I expected it to be like primarily horror, but really there was kind of a compelling like future dystopian sci-fi story going on, and the horror obviously was like a part of that insofar as it was just the completely revolting images and the surgeries and seeing people's insides and stuff like that. So that's a thing that you need to be aware of before you go to this, because if you are somebody who has issues with that, you're not going to have a very good time.
So I have a theory about him having two films with the same name.
Okay.
It's Crimes of the Future. Like, there's no way back in the 70s that people thought plastic would be polluting the ocean. Right? I mean, I can't see that being the case.
Sure.
So, the Crimes of the Future that we're facing now is that. That's obvious. Maybe there's different Crimes of the Future in the 70s that's what that one was about. So maybe in 30 years, we're going to get another Crimes of the Future, and it's going to be about whatever is pressing. It's just my theory.
Yeah, could be. If he makes another movie in 30 years,
he'd be
109. He'll be real old. I will absolutely go see it and see if that theory is confirmed.
I'll tell you what. In 30 years, if he makes another film, I will buy every one of our listeners a ticket to the film.
Be careful, though, because people are living longer and longer.
That's true, but what am I looking at? Like 30 people?
That's cute.
2 tickets, you and me.
Exactly.
I'm basically saying I'll buy you and me tickets.
Yep. You, me, and Herschel, that's it.
Yeah.
We're the only people listening to this.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, the horror aspect is what would be the body horror part of it, right? But
right, yeah.
Would you consider it more of a sci-fi? Is sci-fi over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, and it's really weird because going into these two movies with Men, I was just like, nah, it'll be weird. And with Crimes of the Future, I was like, oh, this is going to be epic. And then coming out of Men, I was like, wow, that was a really interesting movie that was also very engaging, and the ending caught my attention, and it had a bunch of really good scenes. And then with Crimes of the Future, I was just kind of like, I mean, I guess maybe I was just expecting too much.
Just had your hopes too high, man.
I know, I should never get my hopes up. How many times?
How many times do you have to be let down in your life before you stop?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
This many plus a few more, I guess. Yeah. But
some people never learn.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's fun seeing horror movies in theaters again. Yeah. It's neat going out. And, after seeing Men the next day, Sarah and I had we talked about it for a long time at breakfast. And then we actually, so you ever have one of those moments, I just like weird stuff in general. I mean, we both have that. And a lot of times if people in a normal setting are trying to talk to you about things, it just goes weird. Like you learn to just be like, oh yeah, how about football or whatever? Because it's like, this is a safe area. And I don't really want to talk to you about the weird indie rock that I'm listening to or the horror books that I'm reading or whatever. Well, I had mentioned to Sarah that I was really excited about this movie and that I was hoping to go see it at some point. And then she has a friend who likes horror movies, but we're saying maybe PG-13 horror, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're like, oh, I love Double Double Toil and Trouble.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, like, Scream, it was the craziest movie ever made. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so she invited...
I love Hocus Pocus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. Horror's great.
Mm-hmm.
Gremlins, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Sarah set up like a double date with us and her friend's husband, and then we saw Crimes of the Future. And Sarah told them that it was my idea.
Oh.
And then after the movie, everybody just left like very quickly. And so now I'm pretty sure I'm back to going to movies by myself.
Hey, that's okay though. You don't have to share popcorn.
Yeah, that's true. It just like, it was one of those things where like, we weren't really far into it before I was just like, well, this is awkward.
Well, I mean, it's their fault for not looking up what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
If people just get a spine and say, hey, nah, that's not up our alley. That's okay to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It happens. But.
Oh, I also messaged them and told them if they try to take my place that I would, take care of it. So that might be why they're not talking to you.
I was going to say, after going to see this movie, I think they would be more than happy to let you resume your role.
I'm going to say, you think that movie had body horror?
Yeah.
And then take my shirt off and be like, this is body horror. Yeah.
This is what having a baby did to my body.
Yeah. My life will never be the same. Yeah, this is interesting. I'm glad you did this one, because I honestly maybe will watch this one. I'll definitely give Men a chance, as long as I can, like you said, fast forward through that piece. But I think just the one thing, I mean, this is kind of speaking for you, but I know the love for horror films, or love for movie theaters, and being able to watch a horror film, like that was one thing we both talked about really missing.
Yes, for sure.
With the pandemic,
and the excitement of going to see a horror movie that you don't really know that much about, but like it has reasons that have made you excited. So like when I go see Nope in a theater, that is going to be the best feeling.
Yeah. Without a doubt. So out of these two, would you recommend one or the other? I mean, I think you said Men, but I just want to confirm.
Yeah, I think Men was probably like more accessible and more coherent, even though it didn't really make its point super obvious. But it had a lot of good scenes, and Crimes of the Future did too, but I think the confusion factor actually distracted from it a little bit. So I would almost recommend like reading about Crimes of the Future ahead of time, because I feel like if you went into it knowing what the story was, it would make a lot more sense.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, that's all the questions I have. Actually, I got one more question. Sorry.
All right.
This is the interview question I came up with earlier when I was interviewing people.
Okay.
Who do you think you are?
Question number 2. How dare you?
How dare you? Yeah.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.